I actually found that chart of yours somewhat comforting for at least America.
So it seems Republicans are going full mask off, especially when it comes to climate change.
So the fact, in terms of global health, in terms of excess death, we're actually in a better position to prevent death by having the climate increase in temperature a little bit, right?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that study. What I am familiar with is my study. Your characterization of it is incorrect.
Well, your study is very favorable to my state. Our mortality declines by 54 per 100,000.
Wisconsin will benefit in terms of mortality. There are 49 other states in the United States. Many of them will suffer. Many of them will suffer more than Wisconsin will gain. And that is the nature of climate change. It's very unequal.
According to your study, you're concerned if you're in the really hot region of Africa, but in terms of the United States and most of Europe, we're in pretty good shape. We're all blue. We have reduced risk of death.
So this clip is unbelievable because you see a Republican looking at a map of who will be affected most by climate change and saying, oh, well, my state seems like it's not going to be affected negatively as much, so clearly it's not a problem, right? And this reveals the deep shamelessness that exists among the Republicans on many layers because first and foremost, you have the international component of it, which is the simple fact that if you look at areas like Central Africa or the Middle East, you see them getting devastated by climate change. You see huge chunks of the global south that would absolutely be devastated in terms of excess deaths caused by climate change for a litany of different reasons. All of that immediately, in his mind, is just completely discounted as not mattering. But then even then within the United States, you see the wider areas of the United States also coincidentally tend to be the areas that are going to be less affected by climate change. And so of course Republicans just wouldn't care and would take that as a perfect reason to not care about climate change. Because fundamentally at their core, these people are deeply, deeply racist. They have such a narrow view of the world that they quite literally do not care if people die as a result of their actions and decisions, so long as it is not the specific subset of people that are voting for them in particular. And even then, they don't really care all that much. But then there's the layer on top of this, which is just the simple reality that, hey, you know that the food in your grocery store can't all come from like the middle of Wisconsin, right? You know that if you want bananas or pomegranates, you're gonna have to import them from other places in the world. And I know this is really wild, coffee. It's gonna be incredibly difficult to grow coffee as the climate changes. But of course, these people don't care. They don't realize that the world exists beyond their suburban Walmart. And so, of course, they have no conception of the idea that maybe perhaps all the ecological systems that exist around the world are possibly linked to each other. I mean, heaven forbid there be some sort of ecological collapse in the ocean that could lead to a cascading effect that could destroy tons of ecosystems and literally kill millions, if not billions of people over the next century. These are things that Republicans do not care about and they do not think about, because in their minds, they are the main character. This is a perfect example of main character syndrome just completely destroying the brains of Republicans. They are fundamentally incapable of thinking beyond their tiny little suburb. They think that all of their groceries arrive to them by pure magic, and they seem to have no understanding of how our entire globe is linked to each other, while also having a fundamental disregard for the humanity of anybody that is not themselves. Which is why they're so willing to say, well, the specific place that I'm living in doesn't seem like it will be directly affected by climate change as much, so clearly I must not have to care. Not even being capable of understanding how other people being affected might affect them personally, like, you know, losing things at the grocery store they might want to buy. And so this clip right here really is a perfect case study in the extreme amount of self-centered racism that exists within the Republican Party. Because a lot of them think like this. They think, oh, well, it'd be nice to get warmer weather. And they don't think about the excess deaths that are already being caused because of air quality problems around the world, the excess deaths that would be caused by natural disasters, flooding, and the massive heat waves around the world. As long as a suburb in Wisconsin is doing fine, then one of the most powerful people on the planet doesn't seem to care. And unfortunately, not only a huge chunk of Republican voters, but also a huge chunk of just elected officials in the United States share this mentality. Unfortunately, also including Democrats, which is why it's so unfortunate that both Democrats and Republicans are trying to do this Cold War nonsense with China. Because as it stands right now, China is the world leader in producing renewable energies. And if we actually want to do something about climate change, we should be partnering aggressively with China to make sure that those green energies become the dominant mode of energy production across the entire planet. But instead of doing that, they'd rather wage this economic war where they try and undermine the Chinese economy in order to bolster US manufacturing, all slowing down the process to a transition to a green energy future.